Prime Minister's questions.
Member for Couva North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Are there any plans for citizens, particularly women, to be allowed to carry tasers and pepper spray as a measure of personal protection in light of 40 women being murdered for the year already?
Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. In light of the request for this particular non-lethal response to criminals, the Commissioner of Police is actively considering the use of these non-lethal weapons for citizens, women, and particularly the security services.
Member for Tabaki.
Prime Minister, has the Commissioner of Police indicated how long he's going to continue to take to make a decision in the interest of women who continue to be brutally murdered in this country?
Prime Minister.
I do not know of any specific date, but I do know that the Commissioner is giving it active consideration, and we anticipate a decision in the not-too-distant future.
Member for Couva North.
Does the Prime Minister have any intention to negotiate with the banking sector on behalf of the Tobago Hoteliers Association so that properties are not lost to repay debts due to the steep decline in the Tobago tourism sector?
There are not very many opportunities to create negotiations with the private sector banking community. However, the government has appealed to the private sector in general to be understanding of circumstances of this nature, and also that there are certain kinds of relief that the government is considering at its end to bring about some relief to those persons who are so affected. However, there are some instances which might be beyond any kind of intervention that the government or the banking sector can respond to.
Member for Barataria Sanwan.
Mr. On a supplemental question, could you give us the status of the $250 million grant that a previous budget had given to the hoteliers in Tobago?
Prime Minister.
I don't think it's a grant system. I know it's a guarantee system. That guarantee system is and I don't know if the quantum is as that. I think we looked at it a few weeks ago, and it's about 60 million. However, what happens is that there is some support from that system, but it's not being utilized as was anticipated, because a large number of the applicants do not initially qualify as bankable projects. The way that system works is as if there's a bankable project, the entrepreneur gets the government as a guarantor, and the bank provides the money to the business, and the bank that provides that money has the government guaranteeing the funds. But first and foremost, the projects have to be bankable, and they have to apply to tourism. Recently, when we looked at how it was functioning, we discovered that the majority of applications that went to the bank were unsuccessful on the basis that the projects themselves were not bankable. So there was nothing for the government to guarantee. However, we intend to review it and to encourage greater use of that facility, because it has the potential to provide this financial support for those who are successful with bankable projects.
Member for Naparima.
Prime Minister, considering the recent ferry fiasco involving the Ocean Floor 2 and Cabo Star, could the Prime Minister elaborate on the information available to him which prompted his suggestion that the procurement of the Ocean Floor 2 deal was crooked?
Madam Speaker, as you might be aware, I have been summoned to appear before the Joint Select Committee that is investigating this matter. I have agreed to attend, and I would prefer to make my comments at that venue on that occasion.
Member for Oropuch West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Prime Minister indicate
whether a government senator is a shareholder and/or director of A&V Oil and Gas Limited?
Madam Speaker, I do not have that information and I have no such knowledge.
Puch East.
Would the Prime Minister agree that if a government senator is indeed a shareholder of this company, would be in receipt of dividends from monies paid by Petrotrin for what is now alleged to be fraudulent arrangements?
Madam Speaker, I am not in a position to speculate on this matter, and I would rather not, in answering questions in Parliament, engage in speculation.
Member for Oropouche East.
In light of the Prime Minister's statement to the press at the post-cabinet press briefing, would the Prime Minister indicate the qualifications of this person to be a senator in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago?
As a member of the House of long standing, I am sure that the member for Oropouche East would know that the qualification to be a senator is written in the Constitution.
Member for Oropouche West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Prime Minister indicate how often he has been a guest at the private residence of the owners of the A&V Oil Gas Limited?
Prime Minister.
In the last 7 years, I've been to the home of the Bash family about 5 or 6 times, which is a whole lot less than the number of times spent by the last Prime Minister in Gopal House.
Member for Oropouche East. Order. Order.
Would the Prime
Order. Member for Oropouche East.
East, would the Prime Minister agree that his telephone call and/or conversation with Mr. Bash has prejudiced any further investigation and compromised an investigation by Petrotrin, by the police and the DPP?
I will allow that as a supplemental question. Member for Oropouche East.
Would the Prime Minister agree that his conversation with his friend on this matter could be also the subject of an investigation by the relevant law enforcement agencies?
Again, I will not allow that as a supplemental question. Member for Oropouche West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Prime Minister indicate if Mr. Vidya Devkising, who was named in the Petrotrin Internal Audit Report, continues to be a member of the Board of Directors of Lake Asphalt?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Devkising has been a member of the Lake Asphalt Board since December 2015, and given the fact that he is now implicated in this investigation, my information is that he intends to resign from the board, and I expect that resignation to come in short order.
Member for Oropouche East.
In light of that statement and investigations, could the Prime Minister indicate, having said that he spoke to his friend while abroad, could you indicate whether you took the opportunity to contact the Minister of Energy, who is on record as saying he could not contact you, or you contacted the chairman of Petrotrin and or the president of Petrotrin, in addition to your good friend?
I won't allow that as a supplemental question. Member for Oropouche East.
Ask the Honourable Prime Minister if he's aware that Mr. Bash travelled one day before him to the United States and returned a day before him to Trinidad and Tobago.
I won't allow that as a supplemental question. Member for Oropouche West.
Taste of San Francisco Pinal.
Could the Prime Minister indicate whether the government, through any state bodies and or the ministries, caused to be issued irrevocable letters of credit to Bridgman Services Group pursuant to securing the Cabo Star and the Ocean Flower 2 vessels for the Sea Bridge?
Speaker, a letter of credit was extended to the Port Authority by First Citizens Bank for the Ocean Flower 2. A letter of credit was also extended by the Port Authority by Republic Bank for the Cabo Star.
Member for Oropouche East, supplemental.
Could the Prime Minister indicate the circumstances of that arrangement in light of the cancellation of the Ocean Flower 2 and by the fact that it is an irrevocable letter of credit?
Madam Speaker, those statements are not correct in that the letter of credit is meant to provide security for the action in terms of the establishment charter party. The letter of credit with respect to the Ocean Flower. Once the contract was terminated by the Port Authority for reasons given, and it's in the public domain, the Port Authority then would have instructed FCB Port of Spain and not to pay, and therefore the owners of the Ocean Flower cannot collect on the letter of credit because the contract has been properly terminated. So that assumption made by the member for Oropouche East is misleading and incorrect.
Member for Oropouche East.
Could the Prime Minister explain the circumstances why a private provider of a vessel for service needs credit from the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago?
Madam Speaker, clearly the member for Oropouche East has no idea what a letter of credit is.
Between the time that the letter of credit was issued and the contract was terminated, has the port or did the port incur any kinds of expenses relative to that period of time with the arrangement with Ocean Flower and Bridgemans?
The statement coming from the chairman of the port in response to this particular question, which was done in the public domain, was that there was no monies paid to the principals of the Ocean Flower with respect to its response to the action of becoming a ferry service in Trinidad and Tobago.
Member for Caroni Central.
Madam Speaker. Prime Minister, given that a recent poll published in a daily newspaper indicated that 83% of the population think that the government is taking Trinidad and Tobago in the wrong direction, is the Prime Minister willing to consider changing course or redirecting government action?
Madam Speaker, unfortunately, unlike my friend from Caroni Central, I have not read or studied the poll, and I do not believe that 83% of this country think that the country is going in the wrong direction.
Member for Caroni.
Prime Minister, they're obviously in a response like that to a poll. I'm going to ask the question at the end of... Madam Speaker, may I have your protection?
Members, order please, order. 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 I wish to caution both sides on courtesy and parliamentary decorum. Member for Caroni Central, please proceed.
Prime Minister, as you know, a poll represents the opinions of people as expressed to the pollster.
Okay.
On the basis of that...
Is this the question, member? Member?
I'm asking the question.
I know, but remember, just really in terms of you have 15 seconds to ask it, so we don't want the précis. If you can just go directly to the question, please.
Prime Minister, do you think that your government is taking the country in the right direction?
The answer is yes.
Member for Caroni Central.
Could I then ask if you have any intention of taking the opinion of people into account?
And it is precisely because we have intentions like that why I, as Prime Minister, go out and talk to people on a frequent basis to hear what they have to say.
Member for Barataria Sanon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Prime Minister, 6 months ago, you announced that Ramesh Lawrence Morat, Senior Counsel, was hired to advise the Attorney General on the resumption of hangings for those convicted of murder. Can the Prime Minister please advise this nation on the status of this matter, and when can we expect this to produce actionable results?
Advice has been obtained from Mr. Ramesh Lawrence Miraj and has been forwarded to the Attorney General. A desk has been established at the Attorney General and Legal Affairs Office to advance movement of cases through all stages so as to avoid the Pratt & Morgan situation. Regrettably, nothing like this was done during the period 2010 to 2015, and most of the cases on death row would have been influenced by this inaction of that period, where the Pratt and Morgan effects have already taken place.
Member for Barataria, Sandwell.
So, the last part of the question, Prime Minister, says when do you expect it to produce actionable results? When do we expect to see something happening?
Prime Minister.
How soon?
Well, what is happening is that the desk is pursuing, ensuring that as matters come up in the court, they are dealt with in such a way that you get the best movement through the court. And until the matter is concluded in the court, you can't attach a date as to when a particular action will take place. Okay?
Member for Point Up here, supplemental.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Honourable Prime Minister, could the supplemental, could the Prime Minister state what was the cost of these advisory services?
Prime Minister.
I am not aware that there's any cost. This was a pro bono contribution, as far as I'm aware.
Member for Couva South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the Prime Minister inform this House if a company named E&V Oil and Gas Limited bid for a 3-year contract to replace the Superfast Galicia?
Madam Speaker, I don't have that information with me, and I'm sure if that question is put to the Minister or the port, you'll get an extensive answer and a very accurate one. I don't want to speculate on that.
Member for Urupuch East.
Is the Prime Minister saying that the Prime Minister took no effort to get an answer for this question in light of his responsibility as Prime Minister during Prime Minister's question?
Not going to allow that question. Member for Naparima.
It was the same question, Madam Speaker.
Member for Couva South.
Could the Prime Minister inform this House when will the report of the sole investigator, Mr. Christian Mute, into the circumstances surrounding the procurement of the Cabo Star and the Ocean Flower 2 and entering into the charter party agreement for these vessels be completed?
Madam Speaker, I requested this report from Mr. Mote by letter of appointment dated August 15, 2017, as a sole investigator to report within 30 days. I'm pleased to announce that a report has been submitted to me last night, and that report is now to be read and be made available to the Joint Select Committee for its assistance.
Member for Couva South, supplemental.
Given what the Prime Minister has just indicated, Madam Speaker, will the Prime Minister lay the said report in this August chamber?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I have just said, and I hope it satisfies the eagerness of the member, the report is in my possession. I will read it over the weekend and make it available to the committee that is sitting specifically on this matter. And I trust that that will meet the needs of the House.
Member for Shogunas West.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Prime Minister, could the Prime Minister indicate whether or not the Chief Secretary of the THA and members of the executive of the THA avail themselves to the sole investigator, Christian Mute?
Prime Minister.
I am not aware that he requested their presence or availability, and I do not know whether they did in fact comply. That was not part of the investigator was free to speak to whoever he wished, and I am not sure if the THA was one of those bodies.
Member for Shogunas West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Prime Minister, in view of your instructions that there should be full cooperation with JSC, how do you view the non-compliance of the Chief Secretary of the THA and members of the executive, but ignoring the request of the JSC at their meeting in Tobago?
I will not allow that as a supplemental question. Member for Couva South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In light of the delivery of the report of the 7-member committee headed by Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Energy and Energy Affairs, Mr. Selwyn Lashley, to the Cabinet on the 6th of June 2017 to restructure Petrotrin, could the Prime Minister inform this House as to the recommendations contained in the said report for the restructuring of same?
Madam Speaker, it is the intention of the government to make that report available to the Standing Committee of Energy in the House, and that will be done in a matter of a few days, and on that occasion, a comprehensive summary of the report would be read to this House to satisfy this question in terms of what the report contains.
Member for Couva South.
Madam Speaker, just on a point of clarification, is the Prime Minister going to lay a full report in this said House?
Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, again, I can't lay any fuller report than the report of the committee. I just said that it is the intention of the government in the next few days to lay the committee's report in this House. And on that occasion, a summary of the report will be read out in this House.
Member for Urpuch East. Member for Caroni East.
Would the Honourable Prime Minister indicate whether the restructuring exercise includes the restructuring of the massive financial debt that Petrotrin owes, close to about $14 billion?
That is a major consideration in any restructuring of Petrotrin, but so large is that concern and the assignment that that matter is really now being dealt with by the Minister of Finance, since Petrotrin's inability, let me rephrase that, since Petrotrin has put to the Minister of Finance its inability to service that debt, so that debt has now become a matter for the Minister of Finance more so than Petrotrin.
Prime Minister, in light of the appointment of Mr. Lashley to the board of Petrotrin, does the Prime Minister consider it to be good governance to have the head accounting officer and administrative head of the Ministry of Energy as a member of the board of directors of a state enterprises under the aegis of the said ministry?
Madam Speaker, I noticed that this particular subject has been exercising some thought, but it is not the first time that's happened in this country. And secondly, given the nature of the assignment that is responsible for bringing Petrotrin into some sustainable operation, and given the requirement for Petrotrin's business to be handled by the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Energy, the presence of the Permanent Secretary on the board would be a great advantage and not a disadvantage.
For Caroni East.
When the board makes the recommendations and there are issues of accountability, and the Permanent Secretary is the person accountable in the Ministry of Energy, who would they account to when the recommendations of lack of accountability or any accountability process?
There's a body called the Corporation Soul, and I must tell you that the Permanent Secretary is not a member of the operations of Petrotrin, and is not a part of the company of Petrotrin.
Member for Couva South. Member for Couva North, question 13, sir.
Could the Prime Minister indicate when the campaign financing legislation will reach the Parliament in light of the contractor in the fake oil scandal being linked to the PNM as a party financer?
Madam Speaker, I'm very delighted to see the energy of the opposition with respect to this whole question of campaign finance. Because, Madam Speaker, the government coming out of the opposition, the PNM, has continuously been advocating for this kind of enthusiasm. And the member for Couva North would have noticed that in my meeting with the member for Siparia a few weeks ago, one of the matters that was put on the table by the Prime Minister, myself, was this matter of campaign finance. And the government is actively preparing to engage all political entities and the public on this matter with a view to having campaign finance reform legislation enacted before the next general election. And I trust that this enthusiasm on the opposition side will reflect itself in cooperation so that we can have proper campaign finance legislation in Trinidad and Tobago.
Member for Urpuch East.
In light of this scandal, could the Prime Minister indicate, as he spoke yesterday, what further investigation he's contemplating outside of the DPP and the police on the fake oil scandal?
Remember, I will not allow that as a supplemental question.